Assalamu alaikum everyone, Sabahul Khair, good morning. So I hope today will be better, biiznillah, because it seems that your jet lag move is getting better. So as I know for some of you it's kind of tahajjud time, right? So it's fine, inshallah. So what we're going to do, so I will do a quick refreshing. So I have just some slides from the day before and yesterday, very quickly to just refresh, and then we'll start with very, hopefully, controversial question which will wake you up, part of a brain exercise, okay? So essentially, remember from the day when we started, we described the problem as separation of creation from creator, and we said that's caused dangerous virus around the world and affecting everyone. So we have to be really, really mindful of what is happening in the secular education. So we said the problem because science essentially is study of the change by reducing everything to the material cause and effect and the nature. And we said that this is replacing Christian Trinity and putting nature, cause, and chance everywhere and brainwashing the mind of the kids based on this ideology. And with that, disconnecting the universe from God and misconnecting them to nature, cause, and chance, and then make them, instead of to be abd, is make them to basically be the worshipper of the dunya. And then yesterday we discussed about education based on the ayah, and then we talked about two kalimat tayyiba or kalima wa khabisa. So in this case, we said good education is like a good word that feed into the mind and heart of students and have them to really unleash the potential, like the potential of a seed, grow into the tree and with the branches and give fruits in a society, in this world and in the hereafter, inshallah. But the bad education, we said, is based on this Quranic ayah. It's like feeding them with the bad words and bad idea, bad ideology, and killing their potential, or worse, make the shajaratu zaqqum, that's the tree that actually give a bad fruit in Jahannam. That's even the worse in this regard. So we mentioned that there's kind of tsunami around the world, destroying, all the tree, if it's not deeply rooted. So our argument was that if we complain the kids are not really doing well when they go out in society, it's because we're not doing a good job in school. We're not providing strong foundation. So by foundation, we meant that particularly the worldview, the iman, the understanding of ideology and filtering the ideology from the curriculum. So was our ultimate conclusion yesterday was that we need to reach to the level we call the shu'ur imani, that the level of consciousness in which that we understand there is no nature with the agency, no true causation other than God, and no chance, and everything extraordinary, everything miracle, everything is direct creation of God. There is only creation. And then we discussed the ismi and harfi perspective in Nursian concept. We said there are two dimensions of creations, an ismi dimension and harfi dimension. In ismi dimension is like a traffic light that it shows itself. Harfi is the meaning of that light. So in this case, we said the tree is actually a ladder, is a message, is a sign from God. So as we travel in our life, when we pay attention to the creation, we hear certain messages that give us guidance on how to live, how to be a better human being. As we pay attention to the traffic light and try to drive and save ourselves from causing accident, so if we pay attention to the creation, we can learn some lessons about the Creator and some lessons about how to be a better human being. But the first thing is necessary to look at creation as a meaningful expression rather than just a matter to manipulate. So therefore we said that everything has a two sides. As a sign, that's the Quranic word sign is an ayah. And then the sign essentially in linguistics they study this as a two aspect, a signifier and signified. So there's meaning side of the sign and there's a material side or factual side of that. So we said that everything is like this. Then we said the problem based on Nursi'in 4 concept, we discussed niyya, nazar, manay harfi and manay ismi. Essentially we said niyya is the most important part. The problem is in the niyya first. So we have to work on the niyya. But once the niyya is corrected or niyya is set properly, then nazar comes second. So nazar, we said, is like lenses or glasses, or like we call a VR, glasses. So through which you see everything. So everyone wears certain glasses. They look at the reality. So we said the problem, the secular worldview come up with the secular VR. Virtual reality. So everything you see is based on that ideology. So therefore, the way you're supposed to perceive your world should be completely almost different than the world of a secular person, because you look through the lens of Quran and you look through the light of Quran, you see the true reality of everything. So in this case, that in Nursi's term, that is the harfi perspective. And the problem is in the ismi perspective. So in this case that we said basically we need to start with intention, and the attention is shaped based on intention. And for secular one, ismi one, is attention is toward the ismi dimension. As the intention is this world, is a satisfying in this world, with this world. And the ultimate perception is the physical dimension only, but we said our intention is rida ilahi, based on tawheed, and our attention to looking at the harfi dimension and see the meaning in creation, and our perception is both physical and metaphysical, and at least at the beginning, but hopefully, ideally, we reach to the level our main perception will be the metaphysical part. So those are two lenses, we talks about it. So, and today we're going to spend time try to understand really the content of those lenses first, and then we'll try to talk about the language second, okay? Now, here is the brain exercise. There was a whole debate in Islamic history, if you look at it, about the Quran. There was even fight over that, whether Quran is makhluk or not. I don't know whether you know that or not. I will have you to have another debate, not on this subject, and hopefully wake you up, but not, I don't want you to fight, but hopefully it will actually wake you up if you are still in a sleep mood. So here is the questions. Quran or the universe? Which one is more sacred? Or which one is more meaningful? Quran or the universe, which one is more sacred? I mean, we know how sacred Quran is, right? In a way that we basically keep Quran always in a high place and have enormous respect for that. So do you think that the universe is a sacred as well, or at all, or equally, or more?
One is Allah, the other is the creation of Allah.
Okay. So they are different? Are they both equal?
To each other, as if the Quran is talking about the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the Quran.
You say the Quran. Why?
Because the Quran tells us about the universe, about the ayat of Allah. Without the Quran, we wouldn't have known this. It's in words that we can understand.
Okay. Which one comes first, actually?
Which one comes first?
Yeah. See? The universe come first or the Quran come first?
The Quran was when we read the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, see?
Universe will come to an end.
So we can turn on the mic when we talk. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay.
So universe will come to an end one day, but I think Quran would still be there. It's in Lawh Mahfuz, and it is there with the Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think Quran is more sacred.
More sacred. Okay, see, Quran says more sacred. Anyone else? Which one is more sacred, more meaningful? Look at the meaning side. Remember, we look at the Hanafi perspective, it's all about meaning. So look at the meaning side as well. Okay, so which one is the Quran or the universe?
I was going to ask, do we look at this in accordance to Ismi and Harfi? Is that the lens we look at?
You can look at that way as well. Yeah. That's fine. You can look at that way. But, you know, from your own perspective, if that's the perspective you want to look through that, that's fine as well.
Okay, so when looking at that, I might be wrong, but when looking at that, I would say the Quran, because the universe is Ismi and the Quran is Harfi. That's how I look at it.
So the universe is the fact, Quran is the meaning. But do you think that the universe might contain the meaning that is written in the Quran without the Quran?
Yes, but you need someone.
And do you think that, is it possible that Quran just provides you the light through which you see the meaning already inscribed in the universe? Could that be possible?
It is the opposite.
Is also opposite?
It is the opposite.
Okay.
Because
So you see the meaning in Quran through the universe?
the Quran explains the existing of the universe,
Okay.
right? But the universe is how we're here today. Right? The Quran is our guidance how to live. I mean, that's what the Quran is for,
Okay.
right? The way I look at it is that you know, anytime the creator is interacting with the creation, you know, essentially two things when I look at Islam, the Quran and the Prophet, right? A guide, which is a handbook, a reference manual, and an instructor on how you're going to live your life in the universe.
So for our perspective, you think that Quran will be more sacred? That's what you think in terms of what it means to us, right?
The question itself about sacred, I really question the question itself. Why do we want to call it
talks about
sacred?
the meaning part. That's why I said this is so you can put in both ways.
Say again, sorry?
You can look in terms of the meaning. Which one is more meaningful?
Meaningful. Thank you. That I think that is.
I think there's two ways. There's two ways to maybe answer the question. Well, I think one is that if you just say that the Quran is the word of Allah, the only thing that we have in the dunya which is not a creation is the Quran, which is the word of Allah, and everything else is creation. So in that context, the Quran is more sacred. But if you were to look at the universe as signposting us to the Creator, and then the Quran came from the Creator, so this universe is giving us signs towards the Creator. So then a person is it possible for a person from the universe to recognize the Creator and therefore value the Quran? So there's a different perspective.
For that, let's ask you this. Assume that there's no universe and you exist only as a soul and Quran is revealed to your soul. Could you actually benefit from the Quran without having the universe and having the bodily experience in the universe?
The Quran references the universe for you to understand God. That's
Why? I mean, I'm saying that the Quran could have changed this expression, and knowing that you're not going to have the bodily existence and the bodily experience in the universe, and give you the same idea. But
because the test for insan is in the universe. So because the test for you is in the universe, then the Quran uses the analogies of the universe for you to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
As a soul, you cannot understand it. We know human experience. and no experience of the universe. Could you understand the Quran?
I don't know.
Good morning.
I think.
I guess. I mean, it's a good question, but I guess the two parts complement each other. So I wouldn't tend to say that one is more meaningful than the other. I would say that they complement each other. So what I'm trying to say is the whole concept of manai ismi and manai harfi, for example, is derived from the Quran itself as well, isn't it? As a concept. Because the Quran is, I mean, when I say the Quran, obviously I'm not talking about the paper and the book and the, you know, the ink and that sort of, I'm talking about the meaning. When I say the Quran, I'm saying the meaning of the Quran, which is eternal and everlasting, right? So when I think about, when I read the Quran, the meaning that I derive from the Quran explains to me how the universe works, that Allah is the creator of the universe. So the Quran is basically, the meaning that is in the Quran is pointing or is emphasizing, is showing me that everything that has been created has been created by God. So what I'm trying to say is that the Quran actually is the source where Allah introduces himself to me as a human being, right? Because that's what the Quran does, right? In the Quran, Allah introduces himself and explains himself to us. So how? Not through his names, divine names and attributes, and also through giving examples from the universe, connecting his own names and attributes with creation, basically. So the Quran is the source that tells me, teaches me how I can make that connection between the names and attributes of Allah and the creation that surrounds me. Now and then when I look at the creation itself, this is how I learn how to make that connection between, in the manai harfi sense.
Then, the way I understood, you see Quran as the main book, the universe as the workbook helping you.
It's almost like that. I mean, that's a good.
So you don't put them on equal level. See, you put the Quran on an upper level. So
I'm saying it's like complementing each other. Like when I if I have, for example, if I go into university, say for example, and I want to learn something, right? I've got two, as you said, I've got two different books that I'm giving. One is the book for lectures, and the other one is the workbook, where I do practice what I've learned, kind of. So it's almost like that. One is the textbook, and the other one is the workbook. But they complement each other. They help each other in understanding and in bringing out a better human being, bringing out the potential of a human being. And I mean, that's kind of how I see it.
Would you be fine if
I could almost
upgrade the level level?
I would tend to say that if there was no creation and there was only the textbook, it would make it much more difficult to understand the God.
More difficult or important?
More difficult. I wouldn't be able to say that, but I would say much more difficult, let's say.
But then the question becomes irrelevant if there's no universe. So it goes back to the point that Dalal was making, that the context of the Quran is only appropriate when there is a situation of a test. There is always hierarchy from an Islamic metaphysics and an ontology perspective. So this particular universe, you can use ration and reason to get to a particular point. But using the universe alone, by ration alone, by the mind alone, will only get you so far. You need scripture, you need the Quran to then take you to where God wants you to go once you've understood from your ration and your mind what are you supposed to do. So the Quran is a book of ethics, of morality. So it's not a book of science, but so it directs you to in which direction you're supposed to go. So that was mine.
But do you think that the very message that is in the Quran is also in the universe, even the ethical side? When Quran in Surah Al-Rahman talk about the Mizan and refer to the Mizan in the universe first and then say be just and observe the Mizan in your relationship as well. Isn't that saying in a way, look, this is the moral lesson I'm giving to you by already implementing the universe, you perceive that?
Yeah, so, you know, I would draw partial conclusion that with reason alone, having a look at the material world view on itself only gets you so far, and then you need the Quran in order to be able to then take you much further.
No, we're not saying that the reason alone will be certain. There are two things. One thing, does the universe contain such meaning or not? Second, can the mind alone derive this meaning? That's a second question. I'm asking the first one. Does the universe contain such meaning? The question you're asking that the mind is not sufficient to derive. Perhaps the universe has it, but mind cannot derive it. Therefore, you need the guidance to derive this meaning. The question here, does the universe contain the meaning that is existed in Quran? That's why when I say which one is more meaningful.
I think it does. It does. But as we could see, you know, a lot of people have interpreted it in a different way, right? That's why we have secularism. That's why we're here, right? Without the Quran, you know, so many people could have so many different interpretations. I mean, it's there. The will of Allah is there. It's in the universe. But, you know, you need someone kind of like, or a book to tell us how to find it or what belongs to what here in the universe. Otherwise, you can have people that say, you know, nature did this, or this did this, or you know what I mean? So going back to everything that we were doing, the universe by itself is an ayah, subhanallah, but not, you know, not everyone looks at it this way. I mean, and the Quran directs us how to look at it, I guess.
So, very good. Since you said the universe is actually, this is the Quran expression, the Quran refers to the things of the universe as an ayah, right? Very clearly. So, but the Quran refers to the ayah of the Quran as ayah as well, right? So, do you think from that it would be fair to say the universe is the Quran as well? Because if the ayah is what the Quran refers, the statement, meaningful statement in the Quran, is the ayah that the Quran refers to the objects that we see in the universe as well, like, you know, the clouds, the birds. The Quran mentioned the camel. This is go and actually those ayah. Then do you think it would be fair to say that we have two Quran? One is Quran al-Kabir, that's a giant Quran, and one is the Quran al-Kareem. That's what we know in a book format. Will you be fine with that?
Can I say something? Sorry, I have a problem with comparing universe with the Quran, because my understanding of the Quran is not the actual book. That's why many people got into the idea of creating, or the Quran is created. So the Quran is the divine words of Allah, and it's not created. It's been there from the Azal, right? But when you look at the universe, it's a sign of Allah's existence. It's created. So comparing something created with something that is not created, it's a divine. You see, you can't say the universe is a divine, but Al-Quran is a divine words of Allah. So that's my problem in comparing both and finding who's sacred and who's not.
So something created can be divine also?
No, something created can't be divine.
I mean, the Quran talks in the ayah, right? لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبْلٍ رَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. Right there, it tells, right, that that's why the question itself, that's why the question itself, right? That is, this is not a valid question in the sense that you're talking about two different, you can't say this is better or the other. They're complete different aspects. Like I said, the Quran itself is a guidebook that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent for us how to live our life within the universe. Universe is finite, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to say, on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, He's going to destroy. So the Quran is not destroyed; it stays. It's eternal.
Okay. So I think that's what. Yes.
What I think is that universe has been there since it was created, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Hazrat Adam here, Since then, people have needed some guidance in form of book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to understand what is in the universe. Like after every some time, he sent a prophet and a book to tell people universe itself was not guiding them. And continuously they were being misguided when they were living in this, and they needed a teacher and a book who would tell them about whatever was hidden there. And the only example that I know of was Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he looked around and he found and he looked at the signs, and from there he tried to understand what was the real truth. Other than that, for us mortals, for all people around us, I think we are dependent on Quran. Universe alone historically has proven that it was not sufficient enough to give the guidance.
Very good. So I think, remember, so there are various aspects of that one. We are not debating that the mind is sufficient and we don't need Quran and we can understand the meaning from the universe. That's not the question. The question here is, does actually the universe contain a meaning that is deep enough, you could almost say it's equivalent to the meaning of the Quran? And that's the question. Because the way actually our entire methodology is based on extracting such meaning from the universe and then comparing the meaning in Quran, rather than starting with Quran and telling them this is we're Muslim and this is what Quran says, and then have them to believe in what we believe. So the model in 5D, what we try to do is extracting the meaning with the assumption that the universe is extremely meaningful book, as Quran clearly expresses. And in everything in the universe, everything, without exception, are ayah. Because everything has two dimensions. Everything has the meaning side. And the meaning convey the message from the Creator. The meaning is the reflected divine names there. The meaning is the guidance for actually good life as well, if we could read. Now, for sure, to derive this meaning, you need to have the light of Quran. You need to have the guidance of Quran. That's very clear. But I want to, this subject, in the context of Ismi and Harfi, discussed by Nursi in the 12th word, is one of the best texts you can find in discussing and comparing them. In that 12th word, he starts with, as he does usually, with a tamthil, with an analogical, we'll say, with allegory. There's allegory, there's analogy there, within that. So in this case, he says, imagine there is as a king, as a sultan, there's a sultan. He's extremely knowledgeable, powerful, wise, and has knowledge of everything. But he also basically, he truly understands the value of Quran, and he wants to write a Quran referring to its important message. He said what he did, he wrote the Quran with different type, used gold and diamond and everything to point to the importance of the meaning. And I saw the examples that someone is doing. I thought that Nursi is almost talking about this particular Quran. They are really writing, I think it's going to be done in 2025. Hopefully, we might have a teacher training there and go and see even this Quran, okay? So imagine that this Quran is completed, written with the gold, and Nursi says, imagine that this king presented this Quran to two type of individuals, two persons. One is a Muslim scholar, the other is a Western scientist. Okay, and he asked both of them to go and study this piece of art or whatever they think is, and come up with a thesis or interpretation of what they got it from that. So they both study, and he said in the story, the scientist spent a lot of time, use his knowledge of math and chemistry, physics and everything, to analyze what are the metals used, what is the market value of that, what is the shape, what is the size, what is the symmetry, how you can apply the math there. So because he was truly amazed, it was an amazing piece of art. He wrote his dissertation or thesis fully based on those type of issues, showing his entire expertise. The other one is a Muslim scholar. He knew Arabic. As soon as he looked at that, he realized this is the Quran. when he realizes the Quran, he paid attention to the meaning side. He realized that if certain part is written by diamond, there must be something deeper there. He has to pay extra attention there. So he tried to read based on how certain part is highlighted, and he wrote his tafsir or his thesis fully emphasizing or writing on the meaning of the book. And both of them submitted their work for a big prize from the king. And obviously, the king told the scientist that, you know, this is an insult, that this is the best book ever. I wrote it that way, and the way that you are explaining as if this has absolutely no meaning, if it's not in a book. Okay? But though, the king says, you seems like a great scientist and all, a lot of chemistry, physics, math, but you have absolutely, you did terrible jobs. And he expelled him from his presence, and he absolutely saw this is a great insult to his work. But the scholar part, the phrase he used, he said, this is the hikmah, and this is the one that who have the sahib al-hikmah. As you remember, the Quran says that يؤتى الحكمة وأوتي الخير كثيرا. So whoever is given hikmah is given the most out of the goodness. So Nursi in this part, in the story, that the king, the sultan described what the Muslim scholar wrote in terms of emphasizing the meaning of that book. He said this is the hikmah. So essentially, it's for a very long time, when I was reading the 12th words, until I start to really engage in this Harfi perspective, I used to think this just as a book, saying, oh, Nursi is using book analogy, the universe is a book. But then I realized, no, Nursi is actually saying that's Quran, or the meaning of the story. So let me give it to you here. So this is the things against, and this is the Muslim scholar and the scientist trying to, prepare and writing their thesis on that. And so this is the review from the scientist. So he discussed decorations, their relationship, condition, properties of jewels, described them. But he did not touch on their meaning at all. Because for the European had no knowledge of the Arabic script. That's the problem. He didn't know the language. He did not even know that the embellished Quran was a book, a written piece expressing a meaning. He did not know even that. He rather looked on it as an ornamented antique. He did not know any Arabic, but he was a very good engineer. He described things very aptly, and he was a skillful chemist and ingenious jeweler. So this man wrote his work according to those crafts. So you see, that is the exact words of Nursi describing the work of this secular scientist. The Muslim scholar, he says, he understood that it was the Quran, the always Quran, and this truth-loving person neither attached importance to the external adornment nor busied himself with ornamented letters. He became preoccupied with something that was a million times higher, more elevated, more subtle, more noble, more beneficial, and more comprehensive than the matters with which the other man had busied himself. You see that attention, that we said the intention and attention, then the perception. So the attention of Muslim scholar was fully toward the meaning, because he realized this is a book, he knew the Arabic, and he realized this was the Quran, which full of meaning. Okay? So, and for discussing the sacred truths and light of the mysterious beneath the veil of decoration, he wrote a truly fine commentary explaining, discussing the meaning of them, because he saw that the whole universe is a book. It's not a book, as I mentioned, is the Quran, that everything in it is an ayah, has the deep meaning as well. So in this regard, basically, the ruler in the story, as we don't have time, I'm not going to ask you to. The ruler in the story, or the sultan he has, is, the allegory, and as always for the truth, is telling something else. The ruler in the story is basically the creator, is Allah. And the Quran is the story. What is the Quran in the story? Is the universe. So for a long time, I used to think that Nursi is referring to the universe as a book. But I realized that Nursi is referring to the universe as a Quran. And then I realized he used this phrase in different places, that he used the Quran-Kabir when he talks about the universe. That's giant Quran. And he used the Quran-Kabir when he refers to the Quran. So in this case, the philosopher here is basically the person with the secular worldview. And the Muslim scholar is the person with the Quranic worldview. So why the philosopher got it wrong? So that's really a very, the text, the story tells us that he did not know Arabic, which basically means that knowing the language of the universe is essential to understand and derive the meaning of the universe. But perhaps first and foremost one is to really know that the universe contains a meaning. You know, when I read Heidegger, I saw, is Ismailoji, he's not here today, right, our philosopher? So when I read the Heidegger, what I really understood from him, the guy spent his entire life telling us, look, don't treat the universe as a piece of matter, as an object. This is a meaningful things that unfolding contain the meaning. So in other words, he really spent his entire life, if you my reading of all of his work, he's telling the universe is not an object to be manipulated. It's a book with the meaning to be read. But guess what? The guy did not read even any single sentence of this book. He did not. And he reached to the level that he was about to commit suicide, when actually he was removed from his position, you know, because of his connection with the Nazis, you know, and after World War II. So he experienced anxiety to the level he was about to commit suicide. Though in his writing he said anxiety is very good, because anxiety, he says, will really push you to think about what really matters in life. He said that, like, if you really face the death, that's the moment you think about what is the most important things. You put all the trivia aside. But when he faced that anxiety, he was about to commit suicide. Why? Because though the guy really did excellent job to understand the universe as a book, he did not know the language of this book. Therefore, he could not read any single thing from the book. But when I remember once, one of his a scholar visited him, and he went through on the window side and looked outside with a deep reflection and expressing that this thing that you call it thing is not the thing. The being has a meaning. And he's saying that this is a whole goal in my life. Try to tell people, do not treat the thing, as an object to manipulate. Try to treat them as a meaningful expression. Now, in that story, in this case, unfortunately, our philosopher did not even know it was a book. Okay? So, let alone, he had no knowledge of the language of the book. So, therefore, his intention and attention was all towards the ismi dimension. So he looked at this physical side. He studied that. He had the knowledge of that. And obviously, he got it all wrong. That is exactly Nursi's view. That's exactly what is happening at the large scale at every school around the world. That's exactly how human beings in the 21st century are treating the universe, are being educated to view the universe, including what we call it Islamic schools. Okay? So the way that we teach about the universe is basically we teach about the universe as if it isn't an object. As if how, again, I'm an economist, that's how we really, we teach our students that how would you look at those resources in terms of, let's say, as an input that you can basically use certain, let's say, model and optimize the, let's say, your outcome, your profit by using those resources in the best possible way. We tried to come up with a model to tell them, but there's absolutely no teaching about the meaning. In no class, in no subject, they're going to teach you about the universe as if, this is a book. Let's try to read it. Let's try to derive a meaning. Let's try to treat it as a very meaningful book. And I think that part is extremely, extremely important and is completely missing. Question or comment? Yes.
Okay, I understand where you're going with this. Now I'm gonna put a challenge here. in a classroom, right? Say you have to explain to a student a bird, okay?
A what?
A bird, B-I-R-D, bird.
Okay.
So there's two ways of doing it, right? Like we'll go back to this example. One is the physical aspects of it. The bird, the wings, this is what the wings do, this is what it's made out of, this is, you know, the mass of the bird. Now, what is the other aspect from the scholarly that you would, so the scientist would look at that and say, okay, this is a bird, this is how it operates, this is the dimensions, blah, blah, blah. From a scholarly point, going back to your example, how would you then explain that, please?
Very good. Sister Uzma, would you like to answer that? Yeah, because we actually did work exactly on the bird as well, didn't we?
You're not going to explain it. You're not going to explain it. You're going to get them to conclude. You're going to get them to look at the bird and see its different features, like you said, and then try and think, well, how and why. In the 5D model, the way in which we do that is through comparison. In the second step, we give an analogy. So like yesterday, we showed you a slide about comparing a bird to an airplane. And so you show them that, okay, a bird is flying, an airplane flies. Okay, a bird has wings, an airplane has wings. And then you go to the third step, where you critically analyze, can an airplane just come about by nature, cause, or chance? And if it cannot, then how can a bird? Very briefly, I'm telling you this, right? So then the observation now of the bird and this critical thinking that's taking place is going to lead them to see, okay, this bird did not make itself. This bird did not come about through a natural process. This bird did not come about through chance. So who is the creator of this bird? So they're going to come to a realization that the creator of this bird must be the one who created for the bird seeds to eat, must be the one who created the air and the atmosphere for the bird to fly, and must be the one who gave it the ability to, to do all the different things that it does, linking back to the actual science of it as well. And then, what does this bird now remind you of? What do you see in this bird? You see that this bird is beautiful. So the maker of this bird must be beautiful. Al-Jamil. So you go to the divine names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's happening is that the observations on that particular creature is allowing you to find its maker. And then the final step is to then a sense of appreciation for that bird that can fly. And again, you go back to the analogy again, the aeroplane needs, what does it need? It needs so many different things. But this bird is just flying. And so the creator of that bird must be amazing, must have that knowledge, willpower, and so therefore we should be thankful for this bird. We appreciate the creator of this bird and we are thankful for it, we are grateful for it, and then from there, moral lessons, but I think we can discuss that part tomorrow. So basically, in a nutshell, the point is that it's the reading the universe point is that you look at that phenomena, and from that you discover Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. Very good. So let's be added before, because to just make sure you get it. So essentially, if you look at the Quran, what is the most important message delivered in the Quran? Number one message. Tawheed. See, what is Tawheed? It's about the source of the universe, right? See, who is the maker and creator? That's Tawheed. The one creator, one maker. See, what we do from the bird, we take to the source. If the bird can take us to the source, that means the bird can take us to the Tawheed. That's the very first thing we do in a meditative thinking. The second thing is what the Quran does, teaching the divine names. Everywhere you will see the Quran's teaching you the names of Allah. So in meditative thinking, not only we go to the divine, to the source, we actually make sure we derive the divine names. Because the bird can tell you he's Al-Jamil, he's Al-Hakim, he's Al-Alim, he's Al-Qadir. Depends on what is the level of knowledge you have about the bird. What is the third thing that we learn in the Quran? Is certain moral lessons on how we can apply this to our life. This is exactly what we do in a fifth dimension in terms of what can I learn from the bird, based on the knowledge I have in terms of shaping my characters, in terms of actually being a better human being. Yes?
So one last one. That's great. I agree with you there. That's purpose. What's the purpose of the
The purpose?
The purpose of the board.
Yeah.
Because that's the question that Ked will ask you. What's the purpose? Okay, I agree with everything you said. Great, great. I agree that there's a creator. The next question then is, what's the purpose of the board?
It brings benefits.
You mean what is the purpose of
the board?
What's the purpose of the
Having a
existence of the board?
Yeah.
This is the question. The first question that comes is, what's the purpose of existence? That's what always is going to be hit by.
Yeah, I think that's basically, that's very good questions. What is the purpose of everything? So basically, you know, the purpose here that essentially there is a God who wills to reveal himself through his creative acts, and he wills to also create us as a conscious being who will basically understand his creative acts, and then through which that they can, given certain potential, they can unleash their potential, then they can get close to Allah and be friends with Allah, and they aim to have an eternal life in which that their whole purpose to see this very creator and to have a continuous connection and relationship with creator. And I think the purpose is nothing but connecting to the creator. The purpose is nothing but knowing about creator. The purpose is nothing but actually feeling the presence of creator, as the hadith describes, the reaching the level of ihsan. So that is the things. So in a sense that everything around are supposed to help us to get this level of iman, which we call shu'uri imani, that with this consciousness that you reach to the level you say, it's actually only me and him. Everything else is just the messages between us. That I look at everywhere, I see him, because everything is just mirrored to him. So I look at flower, I see him, his beautiful names reflected there. I think that is the way that we see the whole book is reflecting him, and the whole book is helping us as a conscious readers to actually find him, reach him, connecting to him. That's really what we see, that's the purpose. And thus we see what should be the purpose of education as well. That Radai Ilahi, that in a way that reconnecting to Creator, be in a way that the Creator, as the Prophet Ibrahim will describe it, that he's the one, remember, he's the one that he says, what's that, anyone remember that ayah? وَالَّذِي خَلَقَنِي So he's the one create me, give me hidayah. He's the one that feed me when I'm hungry, give me the water when I'm thirsty. He's the one give me healing when I'm sick. So you see that, what does this mean? It means he's describing everything as the acts of Allah, and is describing himself. So therefore, when I look at your name, first it remind me, I don't know whether you know, that's Uwais al-Qarani. So what I see, Uwais al-Qarani was at the peak of understanding of this book and establishing his relationship. When he described himself, he says, Ilahi, Anta Rabbi wa ana al-abd, wa anta al-khaliq wa ana al-makhluq, wa anta al-razzaq wa ana al-marzuq, وَأَنْتَ الْمَلِيكُ وَأَنَا الْمَمْلُوكُ. So when you really look at it, how he defines him and how he defined himself, I say this is a perfect type of outcome you want to accomplish through education. That's you want those who read this book have this proper understanding who is he and who you are, but in a way that you understand you are abd, you are mamluk, you are both his mulk, you are both in his, working in his mulk. So the way he described it to me, it's like a perfect description or expression of the believer who gets such understanding of himself, the universe, and the source of everything. That's what I would say as well. I don't know. That's my understanding, inshallah.
Sorry, I had a quick question.
Yes.
So do we have any, like the original Muslim scientists before we were tainted with secularism and anything else, is there anything available from their writings and what it looked like or the way they approached things, the way they discussed it?
Yeah, I heard the same question yesterday. Maybe it came through you or from you originally, or maybe someone. So I think that's very good questions, because if you read Sayyid Hussein Nasr, he will say that Muslim in the golden age of Islam, when they were at the peak of science, so they will do science based on Tawhidi worldview, which means that Nasser says that when they talks about chemistry, biology, you will find God everywhere. Okay, so it means that they present everything in respect to God. But I guess that there must be the work when we look at that we might find it. But I got the same question yesterday, and I'm interested to read and see those as well. But I assume it must be that. But I don't really hope to find that much. Why? Because the content changed a lot. What can you learn from those books that talks about the bird at that time, while we have a whole different understanding of what the bird is in modern times? But you can find something on methodology, my guess. But yeah, inshallah, I will try to do my best to reach out to find some books.
I forget.
Dr. Tuba, maybe you know the book?
I was just going to say again to the brother, I think it's a very good question that you've asked, particularly about, the meaning, for example, of a bird, which is, you can relate to everything, all other creation as well, really. So what I was thinking when you were asking the question is about, again, when we look at creation, how we actually unconsciously most of the time also appreciate, let's say, I'm just looking for the right word, appreciate the names of God when we see something. Let me give you an example. Say, for instance, if I'm married, so if I look at my husband and somebody asks me, what is it that you like about your husband, right? So I don't say, oh, I like his arms, I like his feet, I like, his eyebrows, So what I say is mostly, I talk about faculties, right? I say, I like his generosity, I like, his compassion, and so the things that I mention most of the time, they're more attributes and faculties rather than, the outer shape and the outer appearance. And when I say so that means that when I say to my husband, I love you, in fact, what I'm saying is, unconsciously, what I'm saying is, I love God, I love Allah. Or maybe I even say, I love you, Allah, when I say I love you to my husband. But I do that unconsciously. Because why is that? Because when I say to him, I love you, what I'm referring to is, I'm referring to his attributes, and I'm referring to, yes, and everything, all the attributes that he has are a reflection of the eternal absolute attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, aren't they? They're just, reflections that I see on him, So unconsciously, actually, when I say to him, I love you, I say, I love you, God, don't I? So, and I think it's the same with everything around us, really. Like when I look at a bird, when I look at every other creation, and I appreciate that creation, and I develop a sense of love to that creation. Why do I do that? If I look at a flower and I really have an affection to that flower, why is that? I have to ask myself that question. It is because of the attributes of that flower that makes it beautiful, right? When I look at it, but what is that I find appreciative, that I find really likable? It is, in fact, the reflection of the absolute names and attributes of Allah. So what the Manai Harfi approach actually does is it turns that unconscious appreciation that I have into a conscious one, I guess.
Very, very good. Excellent. Let's go over the...
Just one comment. So I forget which scientist said this, but obviously they were religious back in the time, but he said that we study the creation in order to better understand the creator.
Yeah, very good.
That was the original...
Yeah. So, but let me explain this a little further. I think that's very, what Dr. Tuba brought, it's very good points. Recently, I was talking to, my father, I think 2 months ago, he had to go through surgery, and then I went to the surgeon, and he showed me all this, he gave me the detailed information about what is the problem, what we'll do. And when I was looking, I look at what he provided through the Harfi perspective, I was just amazed. you know. And then I expressed my amazement. And he looked at me and he said, and he said, it seems like you could derive different meaning from that. You know, how did you reach this conclusion? And then I realized, as though he's in a Muslim country here in Yalova, I realized that then he started to ask questions, you know. So, and when I explained a little bit, I realized that he was actually sicker than my dad because he had this spiritual illness, that mental illness, that mainly come from this Ismi perspective, secular ideology. So, and then he started to say, I was religious of praying, but then I will start to science, and then science now can explain everything, and I realized that God was just only made a concept because they didn't understand anything, and now we don't need that, you know. But when he saw what I was saying is a make of sense, he said, could we talk a little bit more? Because he was really curious, and I said, okay, we can, if you want, we can meet and talk more. But then he asked one of the questions he asked yesterday. He said, okay, I got it. That could be creator, but why creator want us to worship? I look at everything, I become amazed as well, actually. I really, when I look at the human, I study human organs and I look at the universe, everything's amazing. Isn't enough I just say, this is an amazing thing and appreciate that? Why God want me to worship, he said. Then it reminded me, I said, what do you understand from worship? Worship is not actually a certain ritual without a meaning. The worship is exactly the expression of your amazement once you observe the creative acts of Allah in the universe. Then it reminded me, basically, the word of Nursi. I was really amazed. Nursi says that God created the whole universe in the form of Masjid al-Kabir. Then he says that anyone who entered this masjid, they become an Abd al-Sajid. I was like, what do you mean everyone? He says everyone, he didn't say believer only. He says everyone who entered this masjid, they become Abd al-Sajid, which means that they actually enter the masjid, they worship. They can help themselves by worshiping. Oh, then he said, then I realized he's saying that worshiping is basically being aware of these amazing things and offering your appreciation. And after that, I realized whenever I go outside and see people that call nature lover, they take the picture, I say they are in the form of worshiping. They're actually appreciating out there. The only problem, they worship to the nature see as a source. What Quran does, the Quran says that don't think that is from that source, the true source is Allah. Direct your appreciation and worship to Allah. So that is exactly what Dr. Tuba is saying, that in a sense, we need to define and describe even the very concept of belief, because most of the thing become kind of lost its meaning, become just meaningless ritual that we impose on the kids. And they don't understand why they do what they do. They don't truly enjoy the meaning of that, and therefore you're kind of forcing them prayer. But while you can actually describe the meaning of prayer in terms of really being amazed with creation of Allah and reflecting on that and expressing your amazement by saying Subhanallah, by saying Allahu Akbar, by understanding the gift side of the creation, saying Alhamdulillah. So that's essentially what we do in the worship. So therefore, what we realized when we start to work on this one, we were given this in one schools, and as Islamic studies teachers, stand up and say, look, you're talking about the science. You need to write this for Islamic studies first and foremost, because the way we teach Islamic studies has no real meaning of the Harfi perspective. It's just really the ritual side. So, and I started to work on something based on some, stories part in Nursi, but we haven't finished that. But really we think that this perspective has to be also part of the Islamic studies, the way we teach about, prayer and the other things as well. Yes.
Jazakallah, that was the missing link, is the redefinition of worship. Because as kids, right, worship for them is, okay, I need to go pray, I gotta do this, I gotta the 5 pillars, right? I think redefining the meaning of worship, which is like every act that you do is a form of worship if it is according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and recognizing, right, the beauty, like looking at the boat, and understanding, wow, this Allah, recognizing the Creator is part of worship, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created ins and jinn except for my worship. And I think that is where the missing link was. Jazakallah, I think it's clear.
Okay. Okay, I think everyone is awake now, right? Was it good brain exercise? I think so. So let's continue on that, because this was supposed to be only part of it. I think we have like 20 some minutes, right? 15, we have to finish that. So again, this is Nursi's Quranic Karim, Quranic Kabir, and so we already discussed those. There's difference between Ismi and Harfi perspective, from secular and Muslim scientist perspective, the language, the focus, the basically intention and attention, and the purpose. So one is driver power, the other seek wisdom and truth, and the perception, again, you can see, and the outcome as well. Secularism will bring nihilism, narcissism. Therefore, it's not surprised to see Trumpism in their eyes. So it's actually, that's what's expected. Because if you really, again, if you have the secular perspective of the self, that will take you to that round. So again, we call it this in a way as kind of new Jahiliyyah, the pre-Islamic era, in which that we describe as a Jahiliyyah, that's ignorance. But the difference is here, this is a learned ignorance. Those are educated, ignorant people. And they don't know, but they think they know. Which means that there's double ignorance. You don't know, but even you don't know that you don't know. That means it's actually much more difficult. If with the born ignorance, so you can educate them, but with the learned ignorance, it's very, very difficult. You know, that is basically a conclusion. So modern science, based on Ismi perspective, is not neutral, it's value laden, and the language is the secular language or Ismi perspective. So we have to change and look at through the Harfi perspective. Now, we're going to talk briefly, if we could, about the shaping the worldview and comparing the two. Before, I think we have to, before we move to an afternoon session, the 5D, I think there's one more subject I have to cover, then we move to that. So essentially, once we learn the concepts and understand the problem, which we define the problem is the worldview, is the lenses, is the glasses through which we see the existence. So we are going to talk how we can construct a new world view by using the kalimatut tayyibatan, which means the good words, they're gonna actually build the good world view for us, okay? And then we'll compare with the secular world view in this regard. Here is a question. What do you think? We are the most ignorant of which one? We are most ignorant of the self, of the people, or of animals and plants, or of atoms. Let's take it as a humanity, not yourself. We, as a humanity, are we most ignorant of the self, or of other people, or animal, plants, or atoms?
I think we're most ignorant of ourselves. Before you know other people, you have to know yourself.
You have to know yourself.
Before you know what's around you, have to know yourself.
But since you're always with yourself, aren't you? Why don't you know yourself?
Because you don't take yourself too seriously.
Oh, you don't take yourself seriously.
You don't think about yourself. You think about others. You're always looking outwards. You're not looking inwards. That's the problem. We all look outwards. We don't look inwards.
So it's basically, if I tell you that if you're going to go and actually establish the view of students based on the Tawheed, what should be your starting point? The knowledge of the self. Why? It's actually, you see, a secular worldview, the mistakes start from the understanding of the self, and the secular worldview through so-called self-help, business, or books, they actually injecting the secular ideology or misconception understanding of the self to the level. Unless we correct that one, we cannot correct anything else. So therefore, the understanding of the self is actually in the book that we prepared. There's the whole sections assigned to the self alone. So we think that knowledge of self is very, very essential, because through which we're going to have the knowledge of everything else. So when it talks about the worldview, so we're talking about the secular worldview is 4-dimensional, does not recognize the 5th dimension, that is the Malakut dimension. And we're talking about the knowledge of self is corrupted, the knowledge of everything else is also corrupted based on that, and we'll come to this in detail. So again, this is what we call it, the secular worldview is a 4D, which basically 3D of space and 1D of time, 4-dimensional reality, nothing beyond that, and science does not accept anything beyond that. So when we look at the secular worldview, so essentially the understanding of the self is the core of the problem, is based on the Ismi perspective, using the secular language. In other words, you believe in yourself, you rely on yourself, you consider the self as an agency, able with the power and knowledge to do whatever you want to do. That we think that is the core of the problem. So, and then the view of existence is based on the 4-dimension, which means materialistic, physicalist. There is absolutely no Malakut dimension, no metaphysical dimension. There is nowhere in any textbook there is any discussion of any reality beyond matter. And therefore, even the language is very secularist. When something is not important, what they say, it doesn't matter. As if what it matters is just a matter, which means there is nothing beyond the material, okay? So that's the materialistic. And the knowledge is divided knowledge, which means they think there is the subjective knowledge, objective knowledge, the knowledge of the mind, the knowledge of the objective reality. And whenever you bring religion, they say, oh, this is subjective, this is your faith, that's something else. What's really valued in science is so-called objective knowledge. And this is divided, so it's very different. The purpose is establishing worldly paradise. You don't have to wait for the paradise in Akhirah. That's the objective. And the understanding of human nature is actually human is driven by self-interest. The whole concept of economics is Adam Smith's idea. Essentially is his recognition of self-interest driven human nature. And he established all of his idea based on this concept. And the good and bad is based on how you think about it. It's self-centric, it's subjective. There's no universal objective good and bad, and therefore we see that everything is really upside down in modern time. So when we look at the Quran, basically we see, the concept of God with certain attributes, names, and then we see God revealing Himself through His words and through His works in the universe. So in a way, the words that we have it untouched one now is Quran Kareem, and the works is, we call it the Quran Kabir. So in a sense that basically it's, in a way that both books is from God, and both of them reveal something about God and help us to actually get connected to God. So our objective, the message we get is to read. Therefore, the very first message in Iqra, to read. But to read is not the read Quran alone. And actually there was no Quran at that time. Okay, so to read the creation, to read the self, and to read the Quran, we call the 3 books, need to be read together. Okay, so, but once we read, we're supposed to basically have the understanding of the self, first and foremost. That's Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. So when you read yourself, that basically the conclusion should be, oh, I have no power, I have no possession. So understanding ajz mutlaq and faqr mutlaq is absolute essential. That's the true understanding of the self. Then once you understand you have no power and possession, you realize nothing else has any power and possession as well. If I cannot do what I seem to do, that means the tree cannot do what the tree seems to do as well. If my talking and walking and eating is the direct creation of Allah, it's not my own power doing that, then obviously the work of tree cannot be the work of tree as well. That has to be the creation of Allah as well. So by reading and understanding that through the guidance of the light of the Quran, as a believer, then now we have to reflect and remember and realize and relive this reality in our life. And by becoming better believer, humble, honest, thankful, peaceful, caring, sharing, praying person. Okay? So, and therefore we put the knowledge of self at the core. Now this is reported as a hadith. There is a lot of discussion that whether it's a hadith or not, but I don't think there will be discussion whether it's a good statement or not. So you take it hadith or not, that's your choice, but it's very meaningful statement saying, Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu. Whoever knows himself knows his creator, okay, his Lord. So, which basically means the knowledge of the self comes first, because the knowledge of self work as a key to understand everything else. So in a way that we say basically, as a Tawheedi language or the Harfi language is that you get the divine light and instruction, that is the Wahi and Nubuwah, and then through that you read yourself first, and when you read yourself you can actually read the universe and also understand the Creator. So in this case, the knowledge of the self has to come first. So one thing we find out essentially in Tawheedi worldview, we are not talking about 4D anymore. We're talking about 5D. Why? Because there is a Malakut dimension. So and the Malakut is explicitly mentioned in Quran, okay? And it basically means that our understanding of reality goes beyond the material reality. There is Malakut dimension of every single thing, okay? So in this case, we call it this as a 5th dimension, and we say that our understanding of reality is 5-dimensional. It's not 4-dimensional like the secular worldview. So that is the assumption. And by the way, when we had this concept of 5D, we had no we didn't have this understanding in terms of reality, but alhamdulillah, it turned out to be that the way we can put the reality is a 5D as well. All steps in a model as well as 5D. So this was pure tawafuq, not coincidence, right? We talked about it yesterday. So Tawheedi worldview has to start with building the proper understanding of the self first. Who are you? What do you understand of yourself first? So that should be based on the Harfi perspective, which means you need to read yourself in Harfi perspective. So when you read yourself in Harfi perspective, then you understand who you are, which means you understand who is working within you. Okay? So, and then after that, you look at the existence, you see the existence through the 5D lenses, which means you see it's not matter only, there is also metaphysical dimension of the reality. So this metaphysical part was there during the Greek time with Aristotle, but they completely removed in modern times. You cannot see in any science textbooks any talk of metaphysical side of the reality. We think it's essential to bring. Now some people argue metaphysical is more philosophy, Latin part. We might use another word. So we start to use angelic dimensions to kind of refer properly to the Malakut dimension. But what we mean by metaphysical, since it's already known concept, it's basically something beyond physics. Metaphysics, something's beyond physics. So, but again, what is that? You can have different, point on that. But at least we acknowledge that. The knowledge, we say, has to be integrated knowledge. There is no separation. Everything is a tawheed, is all about unity. There's no separation of life. That I become Muslim in a mosque in Ramadan and in the market, I'm just acting like others. No. Every part of the life should be a type of worship. That we're supposed to actually, look in everything through the same lenses. So in this case, that they cannot be like, oh, this is the knowledge of dunya, or this is the things about the dunya, about akhirah. Even when we say, Rabbana atina fi dunya hasanatan, wa fil akhirati hasanatan, we understand this where there is not or, is the end, means that if I want something good for dunya, has to be good for akhirah as well. It can't be, oh, this is good for dunya only, but akhirah's prayer, I have fasting, and that's for akhirah. No, that is, we think, is very divided, secular way of looking at that. So everything should be integrated in this regard. So integration of knowledge in terms of the revealed knowledge, revelation, and the knowledge of mind should be integrated, should not be separated. The purpose is to have a dual paradise But the paradise shall not start after the akhirah. The paradise should start here, which means that we should live, when we live as a believer, we should enter our paradise in this world. And we should live as a bad or non-believer or as a bad Muslims, we should experience all hellfire in this world. Actually, Nursi explicitly says that. He says that it is a misunderstanding to think the Jannah and Jahannam start after that. He says your Jannah and Jahannam start in this world. Yeah, exactly. So which basically means that in a way that if we truly live and sincerely practice Islam, we should see the beauty of it in our life in this world before we go to the Akhirah. Okay? So I remember once an atheist friend was asking me, you know, you spend time, you're an economist and you pray, do you get anything, any favor from God because of that in this world? Because he says if there is no other world, you're in complete loss. And I told him I get everything, not just something, sometime, everything, every time. So basically, that's the type of things we need to, it's not like you believe and you just try to be patient and then you're going to get reward in Jannah. You actually get reward in dunya before in Akhirah. If you're not getting anything in dunya, that means you are not, perhaps you are not in the right direction. Okay? So, and therefore, it's essential that we really combine them as well. The understanding of human nature, which you were not going to have a time, we did not put in program, but in the book I shared with you, we have the whole section dedicated to that. It's absolutely essential to understand the key element of human nature. Because as you know, the body parts, we need to know the parts of our soul and spirit as well. What are those? And human is extremely we put it in a, we put the 7 residents, 7 key elements of human nature. So, but again, we do not have time to talk about it. We basically says, from the secular perspective, there's only one self. Basically, they call self-interest. From our understanding of Islam, there are multiple selves. First come qalb, heart. Then come mind, that we call it, in our model, we call it wazir. For the heart, we call it the king. And for the mind, we call wazir, or the advisor to the king. And the third come judge, that is wijdan, or conscious. Okay, that's another key element. Fourth, we call it elephant. That's basically, we call it is a nafs. Okay, and the fifth, we call it the showman. That's ananiya. Okay, and the sixth, we call it dog. That's quwwa ghadabiyya, or the power of anger. And the 7, we call the deriver. That's the irada juz'iyya. Okay, so we defined basically the human nature consists of those 7 key elements, and we define to be human to really manage how to, have all those residents.
Can you find them in the slides?
It is no, it's all in the books I share with you. But normally we spend at least like 2 hours on that one. But in the program we don't have on the subject on that because we have a limited time. We're going to move toward more practical side. But I strongly recommend that you look at the book that we share with you and you study that part as well. Okay? And finally, our understanding of good and bad is all God-centric, virtue, fadila-based. Okay? So again, that's the Tawhidi worldview. It's like, what is your view of self? What is your view of being? What's your view of knowing? What's your view of meaning? What's your view of, human nature? What's your view of good and bad? So that's basically the elements, 6 elements of the Tawhidi worldview that we try to build. And you see, God is at the center of everything. So God is the center of nature, center of society, center of personal life, and center of history as well. So the essential part, remember we said the problem with disconnection, the purpose is to reconnect everything to the Creator. So, and not only connection, once we have the connection, to see the communication from the Creator through this connection as well. So in a sense that, basically, again, those are 2 dimensions we discussed, that compared to the secular one, we bring the malakut dimension, not only mulk dimension, and against the cause one, there are 2 types of cause. The real cause is malakut dimension, God alone. What we see in the mulk dimension, we call them apparent cause, not the real cause. The only cause, the real cause, is happening in the Malakut dimension with the Creator. In terms of understanding the creation, we say there are two types of creation. Creation we call ibda and insha. Ibda is creating out of nothing. Insha is using the existing one to create it. Like we use the water example, right? So how the water is created? The ibda is, insha is, the water is created out of hydrogen and oxygen. So the hydrogen and oxygen already exists out there, and it's combined them and the water is created. That is insha. The ibda, the property of water does not exist with hydrogen and oxygen, create out of nothing. That is ibda. Okay? So ibda is creation out of nothingness. Insha is creating from the existing one. And this is how we see the constant creation and connection. So we have creator, and then we have the creation. The connection between the creation has a mulk and malakut dimension, and the connection between them in a form of ibda and insha. And you can see, the way you put it, ibda is behind insha as well, which means that there is constant creation of everything every moment. Even though we say the water is created out of hydrogen and oxygen is already existed, but actually hydrogen and oxygen does not have a stable existence, is being constantly created again and again. So therefore, this water, I have it now, is absolutely completely new water created out of nothing every second. So in a way that the entire building appear and disappear. It goes to nothing and creates again. So that is the level of connection between creation and creator. So in a sense that we say you cannot have the creation to stay in existence even for a moment if you disconnect from creator. Because the entire creation is constantly being created. That's called qayyumiyah. That's the name of al-qayyum. Basically, it means that the whole creation is, we are talking about a dynamic creation. We're not talking about like, this building is built, like 2000 and stays. No. This building is being built every moment, again and again, again and again. That is the level of creation in the creation. And that's extremely important. And actually, that's the point almost now science is arriving there as well. That through quantum physics, when they study what is the true nature of the physical reality. So in terms of the causation, basically, God is the real and the direct cause of everything. So if you want to understand anything, you have to connect to the Creator. But there is an apparent or indirect cause. Like you have the seed appear to be the cause of the tree. The tree appear to be the cause of the fruit. But actually, that's what you perceive. It's not the real. Therefore, we call it apparent cause, but not the real cause. The real cause is one alone. That's God. So God is causing and creating everything directly. So the whole task is try to actually go beyond this veil of causation and see the creation in this. Like again, honey and honeybees. How would you read in the Ma'na Harfi and Ma'na Ismi? Yes. How would you see in Tawheedi perspective and the secular perspective? If you say, God creates honey in an amazing way with the ability to make honeybees in an amazing way with the ability to make honey, is this Ismi or Harfi? See? If you say God creates honeybee with amazing ability, subhanallah. If you study honeybees, subhanallah, it's created in an amazing way. It works like a factory producing honey. Is this Ismi or Harfi? That's the Ismi perspective actually. Why? Because you give the honey to the honeybees. The honeybees has absolutely no ability to produce honey. Honey is not made by honeybees. Honey is made by God, but delivered to you by the honeybee. That's why the AI drew it to me. I gave this idea to AI. I say, give me the picture to visualize the role of honeybees. That's exactly what the AI give it to me. That's what I want really the students to have this perception. Honeybee is the delivery man, delivery guy, delivering honey, is not producing honey. Okay? So therefore when I talk about honeybees, if I'm presenting to the Harfi perspective, I'm supposed to really say the honeybee is not the source of honey. It's just delivery guys delivering the honey. Okay? Same as the milk and cows. How would you look through the Harfi perspective? Yes? I would look at that. It's easy, right? So if you say that God create cows, then the cows make a milk, that is Ismi. So God create the cows and God creates a milk, but God deliver meat through cows. That's all. Okay, that's become Harfi perspective. Okay, so milk comes through cows, not from cows. So it's very, very important. An apple tree. This is again AI. Look at here how AI draw it. Apple tree. See, it's like a delivery man, you know, carrying this basket of fruit to us. That's all. But since this man is always delivering and carrying the apple, you start to think, oh, this guy is making apple. No way. So apple tree is not the source of apple. The source of apple is the divine power and mercy. Apple tree is just the means through which the apple is delivered to us. And look at here. What is that? Oh, the tree is talking. Really? That's what the Harfi perspective says. The entire universe is talking to us. Then everything's delivering message to us. Everything is telling something about us. Everything is attracting our attention to the divine names and to the creation of Allah. They're not attracting attention to themselves. They're telling us there is someone who is actually doing all these things for you. Use your mind and use your experiential knowledge to understand who is behind it. This is also from AI. Isn't it great, really, to look at the tree in that way? That's talking and giving you a message rather than, remember, Ismi is you see as an objects only. Now you see as actually some things that are communicating certain message to you. So our argument essentially, which says that there's interconnectivity in the universe, and the whole universe works like a tree and give an apple. I think Sister Uzma is saying you need to be.
I was going to say, who brings the coffee?
Okay. Oh, who brings the coffee? I think the answer is clear, isn't it? It's the coffee, yeah, so coffee has come from Allah, right?
5 minutes overdue.
Okay, okay, I think that we'll finish that. So when you go to the coffee, just think about this. When you enjoy the taste of coffee, is it from the coffee? Or is it from the brain? Or is it from Allah? Huh? Could you get the taste of coffee without drinking coffee?
Allah wants, yes.
Can we enjoy coffee without spending time to go and get coffee now? If taste of coffee is from Allah, can we enjoy coffee without actually going and drinking coffee?
But that's where the concept of ayah kind of view the action.
But when you go and drink coffee, can you say the taste of coffee come from coffee? See? Same for fruit. Where the taste come from? It's actually from the Harfi perspective. So the taste, look here. What is the brain? What is the brain? The brain is just those fruit going in your brain. Is that the food turn into the brain tissue, right? How come the food can taste the food? I mean, that's nonsense, isn't it? So if you really, depends on which fruit you eat much, right? You know, sometimes I look my little boy, I see his brain is just Nutella, yeah, right? So in a way, it's just how come chocolate can taste the other thing, right? So in a sense that the taste actually comes through fruit, but not from them. But does not come from the brain either. It's come from the divine power and mercy. But do you have to drink coffee? Yeah, this is the way he delivered to you. If you want to get this taste that we have to, so enjoy it, inshallah, okay? Thank you.